folks, I'm Quinn of Snazzy Labs, and it's time to create some controversy. I actually had planned for today the giveaway announcement of all the winners for the past giveaways, but I had a problem with the script that scrapes the Excel sheet where I keep all of your entries, and so as such, I have yet to choose a fair winner of the giveaway. So I'm going to modify that script to make sure that it works and give you all a 100% fair shot at winning, and Monday the giveaway winners will be announced for the past several giveaways. But for today I would like to talk about, very informally, about Android, iOS, and Windows Phone. And I'm sure everyone's going to hate me because I'm going to criticize iOS, I'm going to criticize Android, and I'm going to criticize Windows Phone. None of them are perfect. But first of all, I want to talk about my history with Apple. When I got my Samsung Galaxy Note a couple weeks ago, a bunch of you said, "You're a hater, you hate Apple, you suck, why are you that snazzy iPhone guy, you're a sinner, Google, I hate you." No. Okay, let's go into my history. I have been using a Mac since ever. My very first Mac, my very own computer, I got when I was age 5, and it was a Bondi Blue iMac G3. The year was 1998, and I loved, with all my life, this little computer. I had never used a PC before. I had used the Mac that we've had in our home, but in this home, under this roof that I've lived under almost my whole life, we've never had a PC. In fact, we've almost never had a Microsoft product. Actually, the only thing that might be in here that's made by Microsoft is my Zune. But really, I mean, we have never, ever had a PC. So I've been with Apple, and I've been in the Apple clan my whole life. And so a lot of people that are like, "Oh, you hate Apple." No, I've loved iPhone, I've loved iPod, I've loved Macintosh since probably before you even knew Apple existed. And I loved Apple through 1998 when they were going to go bankrupt. Well, I was 5 then, I didn't know a whole lot, but I loved Apple through 2001 when the iPhone first came out, or when the iPod first came out, and everyone thought, who needs 1,000 songs in their pocket? As I'm sure we're all aware, the iPod has been incredibly prolific, and I had expected nothing less at age 15 when Steve Jobs announced the iPhone in 2007. In 07, January of 07, Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, and I knew from the second he said, "We're calling it iPhone," I knew I wanted it, and I knew I was going to get it. I saved several months worth of paychecks up because I worked as an elementary school janitor, and I saved up the $599 necessary to buy the first generation iPhone. My dad and I camped out for it, and I remember my dad saying the night before we went to the Apple store, he said, "Do you really want one of these?" He goes, "Do you really think that this is going to be a phone that you're going to be happy with? Do you really think that you're not going to have buyer's regret?" This is coming from like one of the biggest Apple fanboys of all time, my dad, and he was skeptical that the iPhone was going to be successful. Yeah, Apple had managed it with the iPod. Yeah, the Mac was finally starting to gain some traction, but was the iPhone going to be prolific? I knew it was. And I'm not trying to belittle people if you just came into the iPhone in the last 6 months, or you got your first Mac a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to say, "Oh, well, I know more than you, you're an idiot." But what I am saying is I knew Apple was going to be successful for years and years and years and years. And as a 15-year-old kid, I was willing to put $600 down on it, which I had worked hours upon hours for. I bought my iPhone, and it was amazing. I loved every minute with this absolutely amazing device. And not much has changed. I'm still a huge Apple fan. I still have Macs all throughout my house. There's no PC in sight. I've got a Zune, so sue me. But that's it. We are a very Apple-centric household. But what I'd like to do is criticize iOS for just a moment. For the first time, I've moved to another cell phone other than the iPhone, and I've been legitimately happy with it. I've used a Windows Phone before. I've used 2 Windows Phone before. I've had Android phones in the past for months on end, and every time I've said, "Okay, yeah, Android's cool. Okay, yeah, Windows Phone's cool, but give me my iPhone back." Just because I was that kind of guy. I loved the iPhone. The iPhone had better development. The iPhone was more stable. The iPhone was faster. The iPhone had better hardware. The iPhone was better. And for the first time in 9 months, I've had something other than an iPhone. And I have the Samsung Galaxy Note, and I have to say, I am not sad that I'm not on iOS anymore. For the first time, I have been legitimately happy with another platform. I don't feel like I'm missing out because I'm not on iOS. And that shows a lot. That is very big to me, and it really impacted me because I thought, wow, Apple is not the dominant king anymore. And it's true. Google has come a long way, as has Microsoft with the Windows Phone, in the couple years that they've been out. Now, a lot of people are going to criticize me from the Android base and say, well, Android existed before the iPhone. Okay, go back to 2007. Actually, do this right now. YouTube, first Android prototype, and you will laugh how comically bad Android is. It was awful. It was like a BlackBerry. It was horrible. It looked hardly any better than my Motorola Razr. The iPhone came out and Android was like, or Google was like, holy crap, Android sucks. So they tried as hard as they could to develop a good open source platform, and only until now have they really succeeded. Actually, I should say that with a bit of caution. Android has been good for a year and a half now, but it hasn't been as good as iOS. Same with Windows Phone. When Windows Phone first came out, I was so excited, and I tried to love Windows Phone with all my heart. And I do, I love Windows Phone. But I thought, it's not iOS, and it wasn't. Until a couple months ago. John Rettinger made a video today, John for Lakers of Techno Buffalo, made a video today saying, I'm switching to Windows Phone. Here's why. And his reasons are exactly the same as mine. From 2007 to 2011, the iPhone has remained largely unchanged. Yeah, they've added a lot of features like Spotlight, third-party applications, multitasking notifications, cut and paste, like a lot of stuff. But the nuances of iOS have remained the same for 4 years. And I've been using that, and John's been using that since day one, iDay in 2007. It's been a long time, several thousand days. And people have caught up. Google has caught up. Microsoft has caught up. It may have only been with this latest generation of devices, but I know right here that this phone is an amazing phone. Now, the hardware supersedes the iPhone 4S by no measure. There's a dual-core 1.4 gigahertz processor in here, there's a gigabyte of RAM, there's an 8 megapixel camera on the back which shoots just as good photos and videos as the iPhone 4S. There's a 2 megapixel front-facing camera. There is a beautiful, beautiful AMOLED display, 5.3 inches. And some people say this is a tablet. It's not. If it can make phone calls, it's a phone. And that's how I measure stuff. But you know, this is a very, very advanced phone, and I think that's the problem with Android is I think Android has always been pretty good. But the reason Android wasn't always really good was because Android was open source, and there were $59 phones on contract that ran on a crappy 400 megahertz processor that ran Android. So people would walk into these stores, try the Android phone that was a piece of crap, and they were like, Android blows. Android sucks. And it's true. When Android is on a crappy device, when Android is skinned so heavily that things don't work, Android sucks. But when Android is good, Android is so good. And the same is true with Windows Phone. Windows Phone, I think, was just really immature. You know, it didn't come out into the market until, what is it, a year and a half ago? And when it came out, everyone was like, okay, this doesn't have cut and paste, this doesn't have multitasking, and this was just as iOS 4 was about to come out. So they were like, if you don't have this, you can't come into the game and expect to play. But with Windows Phone Mango, holy cows, Microsoft caught up. They've covered a lot of ground in less than a year, and Android has done so as well. Now, I'm not going to say that Android, Windows Phone, or iOS are dominant platforms, because I think that arguing that is ridiculous, and I'm not going to. But I also like to say to those of you that do think iOS is the best, or those of you that do think Android's the best, or those of you that do think Windows Phone is the best, you're wrong. They're all the same. To me, they are all incredibly sophisticated and stable platforms. They are all good in their own ways, and they all fall short in their own ways. People that say iOS is flawless, you guys are idiots. iOS is cluttered with bugs and limited functionality. For example, on Windows Phone, which you can't do on Android or on iOS, is have amazingly good integration with Microsoft services like OpenOffice and like Office 365 and like Microsoft Exchange, and there are some serious advantages to Windows Phone. There are serious advantages to iOS. It's the most stable, it's the most unified, it has the best development. And there are some serious advantages to Android. You can upload and open any file. Seriously, any file. MKV, you got it. AIF, you got it. WAV, you got it. iOS does not do that. Additionally, if you're on a website, I love this feature about Android. If you're on a website and you need to upload a file or an image or a song or what have you, or a video, you can do so. You can't do that on iOS. There's no accessible file system. And on Android, if you want a file system, it's there. And if you don't want to bother with a file system, you don't have to bother with it. There are custom widgets on Android. There are alternate keyboards on Android. There is Flash on Android. That's kind of like a double-edged sword, but it's there. There is absolute app integration. Apps can take over the actual functionality of the phone if you allow them access to do so, which is incredibly cool. Amazingly good accessibility on both iOS and Android. There are advantages to every single platform, and that's what I'm saying. Unlike up until now, there's more than one amazingly good mobile OS. There's 3. Sorry, Migo. Sorry, WebOS. You guys suck. But really, I mean, let's look at this in retrospect. It is amazing how far these platforms have come. And Android has caught up, and Windows Phone has caught up. Here's what I worry about. Apple hasn't changed much in 5 years. Yeah, they've added features, but they haven't changed a whole lot. And so, if they keep doing this, it may be Apple's 1984. Apple may be the IBM of 2011. They may be the company that's on the top, that knows they're on the top, that's bloated, they don't care anymore because they're the best, and they don't add new features, and they don't do major revamps. And then the little guy, Microsoft, this is not a little guy, but the platform that no one really cares about, comes from underneath and totally does some amazing crap, and Apple's like, uh-oh, we fell behind. That's what I worry about, and that's why I think that Apple has to be careful. Apple has to be there. They have the development platform. They have the stability. They have the solidified OS. You know, they don't have tons of Android devices or tons of Windows Phone devices. There's no fragmentation on Apple, so they should take the advantage of that and allow for other accessibility and features that now Android and now Windows Phone carry, because they're catching up, and they're catching up fast, and if Apple doesn't do something about it, they're going to lose their edge. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Please like or dislike this video. I don't care. If you think I'm an idiot, if you think iOS will always be the best and there is nothing wrong with the iPhone, click thumbs down and live on in your ignorance. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe, rate, comment, and as always, stay snazzy. See you later, folks.